pause for a moment and pray, O God, that the words of our mouth and meditations of our hearts may be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. As we were standing around, pardon me, in the kitchen at the community meal Thursday night, I told the chefs and the kitchen helpers a little thing that had happened to me the past week. That we have a cat in our house, Coco the cat, and I sleep in a double-decker bunk, and I was just alone up there in this loft area, and the cat was very independent, as cats are wont to be, and would hide whenever I came by. And finally, just about a week or so ago, whenever I was working at my desk at night, why the cat would come up and he would rub up against my legs and purr and want to jump up into my lap. And so I would pet him and talk to him, and he got so that he would sleep in the upper bunk while I was sleeping in the lower bunk. And one unusual thing was that one morning I woke up and I looked down on the floor and here's this mouse that's laying there dead. So I disposed of that, and then the next night I got up in the middle of the night. It was dark, and I started walking forward, and I stood on something that was kind of furry and kind of squishy. And I turned on the light, and here's another dead mouse. And then actually the next day, the same thing happened. There was another present that had been brought to me. And so when I was telling this to the people, the chefs in our community meal, I said, well, do you suppose that Coco is just trying to say thank you to me and give me a present for befriending him and petting him? And they said, no, we don't think so. We think he's just proving that he's a good hunter. So much for the romantic and more for the realist. I would like to propose this morning that Christianity is not just high ideals, and I hope that you do have ideals, and I hope that they are good ones. But I would like to propose that Christianity is the experience of being lost and being found. Now, everyone has some kind of philosophy of life. Ever since man has stood on his two hind legs and begun to think, he's thought about this. He was never, or she, was never satisfied to go hunting and pick huckleberries and return to the cave and mate and spawn young and eat animals and die. They would sit in the cave opening after the children had gone to sleep, and they would gaze into the sunset and up at the starry skies And they would ask, what's life all about? Is there any meaning? And where do I fit into the picture? And as I say, everybody has some idea, some philosophy of what life is all about. You may say my philosophy is you get what you deserve, or when you're dead, you're dead, or I always try to do the best that I can, or what's the use, I don't care anyway. And so we're just a few generations from the caveman looking off into the sunset and asking why. Now, I would like to suggest that something about our human situation or predicament, our situation before God. And why is it that we need to be rescued from this? For Christianity is a rescue operation. Now, the first half of the picture is the darkness with which our religion seeks to wrestle, as no philosophy of life does. Every person is lost in himself or herself by our own efforts to try to reach God. We may be heroic by our sheer muscular morality. We may try to lift ourselves up by our own bootstraps. But have you ever tried to climb a mountain and had a snowstorm move in so that you are unable to see the top and how the path that leads to the top? We had a church in Maine, on the seacoast of Maine, and it was amongst our parishioners were lobster fishermen. And they took me out one time, and we were going from toggle to toggle where the lobster traps were and pulling them up. And then the fog moved in, and we couldn't see where we were going. And so Christianity says we can't reach the top by our own efforts. We are storm-bound hikers, we are fog-bound children, and before God, we are lost. Now, we're not speculating here, we are describing. And the Bible doesn't argue so much with us, but it gives us pictures. So Jesus didn't argue, but he told these stories about people and about animals and about things that were lost. And the people hearing this said, that's right, that's the way I feel before God. Jesus said that some people are lost like sheep, just as Jennifer has read. And some are lost like coins, and some are like the reckless prodigal son, and some even like the prideful elder brother. Now, one of these, or all, may speak to your condition, says Jesus. You are lost like a sheep. Deep down in your heart, you are aimless before God. You may be healthy enough, you may be practical, but you just nibble the grass in front of your nose 1 foot at a time. And when the grass is green, you're happy. And when the grass is brown, you baa and you bleat. Now, that's not hard to understand. We have good times, we have bad times, we have boom, and we have bust. If there's a national election, and the economy is doing well, the president is usually reelected and put back into office. If the economy is doing poorly, if people are losing jobs to other countries or to automation, the president is often voted out of office. So a lot of people are feeling like this today. And we are promised that we're going to have, we're going to make America great again. But my question is, have we been bamboozled? Now, so other people try to escape from their life using alcohol and drugs and even mass recreation. Many people today have no aim at all. They just nibble each day at the nearest green grass, lost like a sheep, says Jesus. Or perhaps you are lost like a coin, a silver coin that has been dropped and it's rolled around and under the rug and it can't be found. Now, perhaps you are the victim of circumstances or the carelessness of other people. Take the child of an alcoholic. Sometimes they have difficulty in growing up. They feel insecure. They have no firm role model after which they can pattern themselves. We had an instance in our own family that is a little bit like that. My wife had relatives down in Kentucky, and they were very well-to-do. And one of her aunts, when we were visiting her in her home, said, well, you're just going to marry a pole preacher. And so I'd like to give you a diamond ring, which I have here, and she had a number of them. And so she gave Emily this 3 1/3 carat diamond ring, and I mean it was a rock. So, and it was so incongruous because a minister is supposed to be a pole preacher and humble. So we had a lot of fun with it. The ladies had a rummage sale, and they had a costume jewelry table, and so Emily just happened to be wearing this ring, and as she was coming out of the rummage sale, one of the ladies said, "Oh, you got something from the costume jewelry." So, well, not to drag this out too long, but one day we discovered that we could not find the ring. And we thought, where in the world did we lose that? And so we looked around, and I took apart drains, looked in there, nothing happened, couldn't find it. So, and I would send my shirts to the laundry, and they would come back all pressed. So about 2 weeks later, my shirts came back from the laundry, and the story was that the person that was doing the laundry found this diamond ring in the laundry, and so they looked at it, and I don't know what they thought, maybe costume jewelry, and so they put it in the cash register, and then when they returned my shirts, why, they just pinned it to the outside of the package. So, but you can believe that there was a lot of rejoicing going on around our house at that time. So, well, Jesus also talked about the great rejoicing in this story, in this parable, when they found the silver coin that had rolled away under the rug. So many people are caught in the spider web of modern life through other people's wrongs or other people's carelessness. And then there was the reckless prodigal son. Now, what was wrong with him? Was it his riotous living? Not exactly. It was basically his treason, his disloyalty to his loving father. Religion says that the highest wrong is disloyalty to God. And it wasn't his leaving home, but the way that he left home. The spiritual distance, the inner revolt, the homelessness of his heart. This was the far country of his soul. When he came to himself, he said, "What in the world am I doing out here working with this farmer and taking care of his pigs? My loving father is at home. We have a great home, a great family. I'm going to go back. I'm going to head for home." And so he did, but when his father saw him coming, as you know, he ran out and gave him a great big hug and said to the servants, "Let's have a celebration here. Let us rejoice, for our son who was lost is found again." And so they had a great big celebration, killing the fatted calf, and had a great big roast beef dinner. So now there's only one thing worse than being lost in those ways, and that is like the elder brother, to be lost and not even know that you are lost. He never left home. He thought he was pretty good, and therefore he never found God. The shepherd went out looking for the sheep that was lost until he found it, and he brought it home in his arms, rejoicing. And the woman searched the house and turned it upside down until she found this rare silver coin. And she called in all of her neighbors, and they had a party, rejoicing because she was so happy. And as we know, the prodigal son returned to the open arms of his welcoming father. But the self-sufficient elder brother stayed as he was. He never admitted that he was lost, and so he was never found by God. And this can be a danger for church members, for we know that we are on the right path, and we may hold ourselves a little bit aloof, superior to other people around us, not realizing that they need us to find the way back to God. So we're talking here about the first steps in salvation, the warning of the gospel that you'll never get a toehold in the kingdom of heaven, boasting of your own goodness. We easily deceive ourselves. We are caught in a snowstorm. We are fog-bound. And I thought at this point of the beautiful prayer of Helen Newton last Sunday, how It had those stately rhythms, and she spoke about the brokenness, our brokenness. Reminded me a little bit of St. Francis's famous prayer about, Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. So the way into the kingdom is as simple, but a deep humility of admitting our situation before God. One time we visited the Salt Lake City Tabernacle, as perhaps many of you have. We heard the great organ played and the Mormon Tabernacle Choir sing. In the information center, there's a reproduction of Thorwaldson's statue of Christ, and the actual sculpture is in Denmark. But when you come in and you look at him at eyes level, you can't see Christ's face. But when you kneel on this bench before him and look up, then you can see Christ's face and the love of God that is shining from it to us. So remember, ours is not only the sad news of being lost, but it is the good news, the great good news of being found. The shepherd went out looking for the lost sheep and found it, and he brought it home on his shoulders. The woman turned the house upside down until she found the valuable silver coin, and she called in all the neighbors to rejoice. And the prodigal son came to his senses and returned to the outstretched arms of his father, and maybe even the elder brother got over his snit and came into the party too. So ours is the good news about God. May we pray. We thank you, O God, for Jesus, your Son, who shows us our human nature and the way into your presence. Amen.